Welcome and thank you for viewing the 2020 Title II District Coordinators Training. We encourage you to grab a piece of paper so that you can write down any questions or thoughts you may have along the way. We will provide our contact information at the end of the video so that you can contact your consultant for any assistance that you may need. We're going to use guiding questions to structure the information that's going to be discussed in this session. This will be a review for a lot of you, but we do have new coordinators with us this year, and we hope that this will be useful information for everybody. We first are going to look at the intent of and allowable expenditures that are associated with Title II. And then we want to talk about some things to keep in mind when developing your district Title II plan. And then finally, we'll go over the GMAP application and talk about some changes that have been made to the FY21 application. The very simple way to summarize Title II Part A intent is to say that it is meant to support and strengthen the educational process for students through educator improvement. You'll notice that supplemental is highlighted. You're going to hear and see that word several times throughout the session. Title II Part A funds are supplemental, so always keep in mind that these funds are intended to be used in addition to what your district already is doing to help students through improving educator effectiveness in your district. That's the purpose of the funds, helping students through educator improvement. Looking a little closer at the definition of supplement and supplant, how this is defined for Title II is pretty simple. Always think of it as how you're adding to what you're already doing instead of replacing it. Also related to the supplant requirements under Title II intent is to think about using these funds above and beyond what you already do as a district. All federal funds are to be used to provide supplemental services. And a good way to evaluate activities in terms of supplementing versus supplanting is to ask yourself a few questions to help guide your district plan. The first question to ask yourself is if the activity or initiative is reasonable. Is the cost associated with your plan practical and realistic? Is it based on prudent and sound purchasing practices? The second question to ask is the expenditure allocable, meaning are these funds going to be distributed for a particular purpose that benefits your program, and are the funds distributed proportionately for an allowable activity? Another question to ask yourself is if this is a necessity. Is the activity or expenditure essential for implementing a needs-based activity for your district? And then always ask yourself if the expenditure is documented. All expenditures or activities that are funded through Title II Part A should have clear data and documented evidence to support the effectiveness of the expenditure as well as the need. We use these same guidelines when working on applications. So if you ever have a question about an allowable expense, or if we need a little more information when we're working on your application, these are typically the things we'll ask you to think about. A final question you can ask yourself is this: if you can answer yes, then the funds might be used more to supplant rather than supplement, and you might want to rethink your plan. So allowable expenditures under Title II-A, the majority of those fall into one of these 5 categories: professional learning, teacher recruitment, teacher career pathways, the equitable distribution of teachers, and teacher retention. We're going to look at each one of these briefly and provide just some basic guidelines regarding allowability. Again, we encourage you to stop the video at any time and write down questions that you might have and then contact your consultant. All professional learning experiences funded through Title II Part A should meet all 6 of these criteria. Notice that the very first one is needs-based. This is a cornerstone of all federal programs and really what drives the whole process, and we'll talk more about that later. Also notice that the professional learning needs to be evidence-based, which is another big part of federal funding requirements. All Title II Part A expenditures start with a need, but those needs should be met with evidence-based actions or activities. If your district has a need for professional learning for staff, ask yourself, will this professional learning experience improve the effectiveness of the participant, and what evidence will I have to back that up? Also notice in the narrative that this includes professional learning for all staff involved in the well-rounded education of a child. So professional learning is not just limited to classroom teachers, but also includes paraeducators, ESL teachers, gifted and talented teachers, media specialists, early childhood educators, anyone who takes a part in a child's educational experience. Teacher recruitment and retention are very closely related, but they can also stand alone based on the needs of your district. If your needs assessment shows a need for teacher recruitment or retention, first think about what your district already does for this. Title II Part A funds may be used to support additional recruitment efforts and strategies such as new teacher induction programs or funds to help with praxis tests or study materials. But they cannot be used for celebrations or promotional items. Those are nice things to have and provide, but they are not an appropriate use of these funds because they're really not a necessity. Likewise, think about retention in the same way. If this is a need in your district, think about how Title II funds can be used to supplement what your district already does to keep effective teachers. This might be providing stipends for mentoring new teachers or fees associated with national board certification. Always keep in mind that whatever supplementation strategies you choose, that there needs to be documented evidence that that strategy is effective. Creating optional career paths for teachers is another allowable use of Title II Part A funding. These pathways are for teachers who want to advance in their career, but who do not necessarily want to leave the classroom. This might include stipends or salaries for instructional coaches, teacher leaders who collaborate with administrators or lead decision-making groups, or teachers who can provide professional learning for other staff in the area of their expertise. Equitable distribution of effective educators is also an allowable Title II funded initiative. These activities or initiatives are to support the distribution of effective educators and connect them with the most needy students in schools. Activities here might include funding strong induction and or mentoring programs that support educator knowledge on and support the needs of high poverty students, or financial incentives that put the most effective teachers into the schools with the neediest kids. Anything that supports strategic teacher and even student placement so that all students have the best opportunity to succeed. If your district shows a need for an additional class due to having classes that are over capacity, Title II Part A funds can be used for class size reduction purposes. Since this is a supplemental position that is based on need and evidence, funds cannot be used to just fill a position because of cuts in teacher allocations. Please remember to check the regulatory class size capacity for the grade level you are considering supplementing. The cap size must be met or exceeded, and evidence must be available that shows that the student-teacher ratio change will make a positive impact on student achievement. This is just a short list of some examples of allowable expenditures that we have seen in many applications. We also sometimes see expenditures that are not allowable. So we wanted to specifically mention a few of these requests and why they're unallowable. These are very important activities in the education of a child, but they're normal district functions, meaning curriculum, assessment, and data work will always have to occur with or without federal funds. However, providing guidance for staff on how to use curriculum, assessment, and data to improve instruction is allowable under Title II, Part A, as long as it's reasonable and necessary. This would typically be provided for new teachers or teachers that are new to the district. Other allowable expenditures worth mentioning are related to materials. Title II Part A funds cannot be used for student materials or for class or staff sets of materials, but they can be used for materials that are essential to or are connected to professional learning that staff members participate in. So for example, if a teacher joins an instructional cadre and needs a book or a manipulative as part of the cadre, that's an allowable expense as long as that cadre is a documented need. Let's say the teacher gains a lot of valuable instructional knowledge through that and would like for the students to have some materials. That's a great idea, but the district would need to use a different funding source instead of Title II Part A. So we encourage you to stop and write down a few thoughts or questions regarding any Title II Part A intent or allowable expenditures. Please feel free to stop the video at any time if you need a break. The next section of the training, we are going to take a look at some things to think about when preparing and working on your Title II Part A plan. These are considerations to keep in mind throughout the year, not just in planning. But it all does start with a plan. Planning is such an important part of the Title II Part A process, and some changes we've made in GMAP hopefully will help with some of this. We mentioned the importance of questioning expenditures in terms of reasonability and necessity, and developing a district needs assessment will help clarify those questions really nicely. There is a very basic needs assessment planning tool in the Title II handbook, which can be found on the web page. But anything that your district chooses to use to determine the needs of students and staff will work in terms of Title II requirements. Your district may want to look at the CDIP, CSIP, surveys, scores, any number of things. Feel free to use whatever data is going to help you determine and then prioritize the needs of your district. The next step is then to use your needs assessment findings to develop a plan. How can you use Title II Part A funds to supplement what your district already does to improve the areas of need? If your needs assessment shows the need for new teachers, how will you improve recruitment? How will you supplement recruitment? And so forth. The last consideration in planning is to think about who will be involved in making these decisions. Federal law requires that all shareholders be involved in the decision-making process related to spending Title II Part A funds. You want to bring all these groups together to the table. That is not just district and school personnel, but it includes community members and families, paraeducators, again, anyone involved in the education of a child. You also want to be sure that you document these meetings by saving agendas or the minutes or sign-in sheets. Another consideration is the consultation with non-public schools and their participation in federal programs. Federal law requires that equitable services be provided to all non-public school students, teachers, and parents. This is because federal programs are supported with tax dollars, so all children and teachers are eligible to receive these services. Non-public schools do not receive funding, but they can can receive services and/or materials if they choose to participate. The public district will maintain all fiscal controls, so no reimbursements will go to the private schools, only services. So if non-public school staff participate in a professional learning experience or request to attend a conference, the fees must be paid by the public district. If materials are purchased, they also remain the property of the public district. These services must be supplemental and neutral, and be sure that all consultation with non-public schools is ongoing throughout the year and documented. There are two types of collaboration that we want to talk about in this session, and we hope that you'll keep these in mind during your planning and implementation. The first is collaboration among shareholders. It's very important to involve everyone involved in the education of a child in the decision-making process. Remember to always include parents and community partners when you're planning district initiatives. Your district may be near a public or private university. Your public library may have a strong program for children. These are valuable collaborators who can provide new insights or suggestions. Another type of collaboration to consider is the working relationship between the Title II coordinator and the district finance officer. It's very important that the two of you work together and make sure that the expenditure request and budget aligns, as well as the budget and munis codes aligning. One of the main things we see when looking at applications are often small differences in the set-asides and the budgets, and this most always is just a slight miscommunication between the finance officer and the coordinator. Collaboration between you and the finance officer can be a huge benefit throughout the application process. So last, but certainly not least, is the importance of the use of documentation. Every expenditure using Title II Part A funds should be not only needs and evidence-based, but also documented. The best way to show the needs and evidence base is through thorough documentation. This is not only a regulatory requirement, but it's also a great way to show how your efforts and your program are working in your district. Consider using maybe an online storage platform like Dropbox or SharePoint, or even a binder or a box, but just please be intentional about dating and labeling documents and about keeping data that provides evidence of your hard work. This is just a suggested timeline for the Title II Part A cycle. It's fairly flexible and can be adjusted to meet the needs of your district. So in winter or early spring, that is a good time to start working on the needs assessment with input from your shareholders, and also to send out participation letters to your non-public schools to see if they will be accepting services for the upcoming year. Then you will want to consult with the non-public schools that choose to participate, get their input, and see what their needs are. Next is the open application timeline for the GMAP application. That is open currently right now and will run through June the 30th. After the application is approved, districts can start spending those funds on July 1st. And then the last part of that cycle will happen in mid to late fall, and that's when the final allocations are uploaded into GMAP after we receive them from the federal government. At this time, some revisions will have to be made in those GMAP budgets. So again, jot down any questions you have and take a break as needed. So now we're going to talk about the updates that have been made to the GMAP application this year. And the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the helped budget new features document that is available here to be downloaded and or printed. We suggest that you do print it and have it with you when working on the budget. There is a lot of helpful information in there and some good examples. I'm going to be using screenshots during the remainder of this training instead of going into the live site. So please know that you as always, can call on us and we will be glad to walk you through the process in more detail if necessary. So when you access the Title II Part A application, the first thing you will notice is are some changes on the Support for Effective Instruction page. There are 3 in particular, and one is the use of some checkboxes, and then the others a little bit more, the narratives have been changed. We hope that this is going to simplify how districts approach the GMAP application. So our new look includes some needs assessment information, asking for more concise narratives, and then replacing some of those narratives with checkboxes. Here you can see that the top part of the page includes an area where you can check the types of data that you used in your needs assessment. If there's something that you use that's not listed here, you're welcome to type it into this box. Below that is a place for a brief statement or description stating what needs were discovered. And then there are 3 narrative boxes below that, or where you can include a concise and brief description regarding how your district will use Title II Part A funds to address your identified needs. So what types of professional growth and improvement might be implemented, what type of data will you keep to keep that implementation rolling. The second part of that page has 3 parts that just require checkboxes to use as verification. This includes checking a box that describes how you're going to prioritize your funds, which shareholders were included in the decision-making process, and then verification that you are using Title II Part A funds to supplement your district initiatives rather than to supplant. In the new GMAP application for Title II Part A, we have put all the personnel details on one page, again, to hopefully simplify the application for you. There are no district or school set-aside pages, and all that information will be collected on the budget page, and we'll look at that a little bit later. This will eliminate having to go back from and forth between the pages to copy information. So please note that there is a program guidance link on the top of this page. This will take you directly to guidance provided by the United States Department of Education. And also on this page is where you can indicate whether all district staff is or is not appropriately certified. And that information can always be found in your district lead reports or by contacting the Educational Professional Standards Board. If your district does have staff members without appropriate certification, we ask that you please upload a brief description of what the district is doing to change this and put that in the district document library. The other sections on this page are for providing information about any district staff who are paid either partially or fully using Title II funds. If you don't use Title II funds to pay any salaries, then you can check this box and move on to the next section. If you do use Title II funds to pay either partial or full salaries, then you're going to provide that information here on this page. This first section is for district-wide personnel. So this would be instructional coaches or other staff members who serve the whole district. You will indicate the head count here and then the percentage of the salary in terms of full-time equivalency here. When doing that, think about those questions that you want to ask yourself, especially about being reasonable. Think about these percentages. If you have a staff member that is being paid using Title II funds and the full-time equivalency is a very low percentage, like 4 or 5%, ask yourself if that's reasonable. And would that staff member still be paid if Title II funds weren't available? Sometimes that can be considered a supplanting issue when it's that small of amount. The bottom half of the personnel page is for reporting Title II funded staff who work in one specific school. This used to be on the school set aside page, but it's all located on this one page now. If you have instructional coaches or class size reduction teachers working in a specific school who are paid partially or fully from Title II funds, you're going to provide that information here. There is a drop-down feature that will have all the schools in your district already preloaded, so you have the ability to enter the information per school. If you are utilizing class size reduction teachers, be sure to include the student-teacher ratio in the narrative. We've listed the state cap sizes here for your convenience, and then please also note this checkbox. If your district has used Title II funds for a class size reduction teacher in the previous year, we ask that you please upload some documented evidence on the effectiveness of the classroom class size reduction teacher into the district document library. The Equitable Service page has not changed from last year. If your district does not have any participating non-public schools, you'll just check that box and go on to the budget. If you do have participating schools, you'll enter the information here. The GMAP will calculate the amount once your enrollment is added, and this is where you'll list the school names and contact information and the description of the services that they'll be participating in. So the budget page has the most changes from last year, but these are all changes that we hope will simplify the application for you. And we did use a lot of feedback provided from consultants to make or to support a lot of these changes. So the first thing we want to point out on the budget are different ways you can use prior budget information to help with this year's. And the first one of those is the copy forward feature that will allow you to bring last year's budget forward for easier editing. So to access this feature, you'll click on Copy Forward here, and then you will get a message that asks you if you're sure. So just click Yes or Copy. And after you do that, your budget page will look something like this. You're going to notice that the feature is gone and that you will either have a positive or negative balance now. That's because the budget that comes forward from last year won't be exactly the same as your allocation for this year. To edit last year's budget so it correctly reflects the needs and allocations for FY21, you're going to want to click on Modify so you can make the necessary changes. So when you do that, you'll get a screen that looks similar to this. I know it's really small, but I wanted you to see that it does bring everything forward. And so you'll have the option if you want to just change something, you would click on Edit, and it'll allow you to keep everything the same except, for what you need to edit. If you're no longer going to use that, you can click delete. And then if you have something new you want to add, you would click on add budget detail. So I want to take a closer look at one of the line items so you can see what the new features is, and then again how easy it is just to make some changes. So here's the edit. You would click on the pencil, and again the delete and the add budget detail. You'll notice your narratives and everything are copied forward as well. But as mentioned before, the district and school set-aside pages have been removed and combined in with the budget details. So whether you're editing your old budget or adding new budget items, you're still going to need to visit each line item and then use this drop-down box that I'm going to show you to notate whether the cost is at the district or school level. So if we were going to use this same budget detail item in our FY21 application, we would just make sure we check the category, and all of them are available in a drop-down list. So if we check category, we get the choice of either the district or the non-public school budget. So we would choose that. The next is choosing the object codes. And that is the codes to choose to make sure you have the appropriate munis code for the expenditure. All allowable codes for Title II Part A have been uploaded into GMAP, so whatever code you need should be found on this list. The next drop down is where you will indicate your set aside by using the appropriate tag. If you notice this example in the screenshot, this line item is for certified salary. For the Title II coordinator, this is somebody that would serve the whole district, so we would tag this as a district administrative cost. You need to then fill in the quantity, which is always 1, and then the cost. And then also provide a very brief statement or two in the narrative to describe how the money is going to be used in this line item. When that's complete, choose update, and it'll bring you back to your budget page. So another way to work on your GMAP budget is to use the download feature. And after copying your previous budget forward, you can choose the download, which will put all of your budget information into an Excel spreadsheet. So that might look something like this. The information will come over identical as what was already in GMAP, but now it's in a spreadsheet where you can edit, add, remove, or remove items to update it for FY21. So you can change your narrative, your cost, take it out, add something new. You will notice that the budget tag column is empty. So again, you're going to need to fill that in as you initially set up your budget. But that information can be found here on these tabs below. There's also your available budget cells. So all your munis codes will be here. All your schools will be listed here. And then your available budget tags, meaning your set aside designation, will be listed here. So you will need to choose what that is and copy and paste it back into your budget. You want to be sure to save your budget once you have updated it and before you close your spreadsheet, because that does not automatically save into GMAP. It saves onto your computer. So you will close out your spreadsheet after you saved it, and then you'll go back to your budget page and you'll choose upload. And then you'll get a page that looks like this. And then you will simply browse through your desktop or hard drive and find your saved spreadsheet, and then tell it you want to create, and then it'll be ready to go. A final option to update your FY21 budget is to use the budget by object code feature. If you hit that, you will get a screen that looks similar to this. And you can just click modify and go through here and update your details one by one. So we do strongly encourage you to utilize the help pages in GMAP. We have tried to be very explicit with these and also make sure they are directly connected and aligned with ESSA requirements. There's a help page for each section in GMAP across all programs, not just Title II Part A. In our budget help pages, we have included guidance on how to develop your budget, how to update and complete it, and also kept the guidance from the district and school set-asides. This has been a lot of information to absorb while I was just sitting at a computer. So again, please feel free to stop and start and contact us with any questions that you might have. Just a few things before we end the session, and that is the GMAP considerations. So as you and your finance officer work on the application, these are some things to think about. Are the codes you're using in GMAP allowable codes for Title II Part A? Again, the allowable codes are uploaded, but if you are working on something that you and your finance officer feel needs to be in a different code, you need to talk that through and just make sure that you find a code that is allowable under Title II Part A regulations. You want to think about if the budget descriptions align with the cost, meaning, with the codes, meaning if you have described the need for professional learning, does the code match that description and does not say something in terms of travel, unless the travel is directly associated with the professional learning? Do the codes in GMAP match the open codes in Munis? This is another reason it's really helpful to sit down with your finance officer, because you all can discuss those codes. Whatever is in GMAP needs to be mirrored in Munis and vice versa. And then the last thing to think about is, do the amounts in your GMAP budget amounts match what the amounts are in Munis? These are just a few very common reasons that we ask for applications to be revised, and we hope that the changes in GMAP will remedy a few of these. And along the same lines as the considerations are misalignment errors. Again, another really good reason to work side by side with your finance officer. All the codes and all the amounts in GMAP budgets need to align with Munis. And then your details also need to align. Probably a better example of that is if on your support for effective instruction page, your needs assessment has shown clear evidence that you need to work on recruiting effective teachers, then those details or that expense should also be reflected on your budget page. So if that shows in your needs assessment, but on your budget page, everything goes into professional learning, that's a misalignment. The budget page needs to reflect exactly what's in your plan. Second revision issue is just usually to do with the lack of information. Typically that was out of shareholder input or class size reduction, but we again hope the application will reduce that. And then the last thing, sometimes there's just expenditures that are not allowable. And we always try to do our best to work with you to help get everything where it's at in an allowable and approvable status. So again, a lot of information to absorb while just sitting down at a computer. But we just want to summarize that Title II Part A planning is just a process about including sitting down with your shareholders and identifying the needs of your district, and then thinking about what activities might impact how to meet those needs. That might include helping teachers become more strong, instructionally stronger. It might be working on recruiting, supporting, and keeping effective teachers in your district, or it may be the need to connect strong teachers with the neediest students. And then asking yourself, are these activities reasonable, allocable, and necessary? And then how are we going to document all the great ways we're going to help our staff members and our students? Your feedback is very, very important to us as we work to do our very best to support you and your district. And we'd really appreciate it if you would take this brief survey regarding this training. Also, if you need ELA credit for viewing this session, please contact Chris Jarbo or any one of the other Title II Part A consultants, and we'll make sure that that credit gets to you. Here's our contact information along with a map of the regions that we serve, but we're all very to help anyone regardless of location. Please don't ever hesitate to call on us for any reason. We're really looking forward to working with you during the 2021 school year, and we appreciate you taking the time to watch this video.